Chapter 19 The Garden and Miquon. While aboard Umbriel's flagship, Titania felt tired and decided to go to the ship's internal garden, simulating day and night cycles with all sorts of Selenese fauna. And amongst the garden were the tweeting of birds, the buzzing of June bugs, and the running water of a little stream. While there, Titania sat down at the edge of a little red and white pagoda, with her small feet in cool running water between her toes, as she began to meditate on her life, as she thought to herself, "For as long as I've been away from my kingdom, I've experienced things that no princess of my standing has ever had to experience. And for how many things I have experienced, how is it that I still don't know who I'm supposed to be? Why am I cursed to never know my own destiny like my sisters Rhea and Lisa are gifted to know who they are?" As she continued to think about her life, a single teardrop fell from her lavender eyes with a soft face of melancholy. And as she sat there on the pagoda's edge looking at her rippling reflection on the water, Agron sees the melancholy on her face and sits next to her as she wraps her soft feathered wings around him and rests her head gently on his shoulder. Agron then gently puts his dragon strength arm around Titania's shoulder, gently rubbing her soft skin, as he whispers kindly, "You don't have to tell me what's wrong. If you need me, I'll be there for you. Even though I might not have had the greatest life growing up, protecting you is the right thing to do. It has brought me joy. It's almost like you're a little sister to me, even though we're not related." Agron then wipes the tear from Titania's lavender eyes, as he says to her, smiling merrily, "Just like me and Tatsu." Titania then cracks a small smile and holds Agron a little tighter as she says sweetly, "Thanks, Agron." Meanwhile, Agent 402 Nebraska saw the two while chewing on her chicken sandwich while sitting on a rock, as she thought to herself, "He really has a soft spot for that girl, doesn't he? It's a real shame she only is an asset to get to Azrael and make her do America's bidding. But then again, I can't but help feel sorry for her, even though she's part of the royal scum of the earth." And while Agent Nebraska was relaxing and watching Titania, Philomena stared into Natalia's beagle brown eyes with her hands on her hips and said without words, "I don't trust you. Why are you really here?" To which Natalia asked, "Can I help you?" while using her Tanuki magic to mask the feelings of her heart from Philomena's Amoria and heart sense. Philomena then answered Natalia sternly, "My Amoria and heart sense can sense you're masking your true feelings with your Tanuki magic, because I felt your immaterial heart just flatline. Why you really been watching Titania this past hour and never taken an eye off me when I'm probably the least threatening person here, and there are plenty of Selenese soldiers here to protect Titania? Why?" Natalia Whitetail then continues to mask her emotions to her own detriment as she answers calmly, "The President has ordered me personally to protect Titania till she can return to her kingdom. All other protectors are secondary." Philomena's sapphire blue eyes then glare into Natalia's soul as she says to her, "I don't believe you, especially with that Tanuki heart mask. Even if my Amorian heart sense can't feel your true feelings, I know you're having something to hide if you're masking your emotions. What are you hiding? After all, you said we need to be transparency to build trust in our team, but I guess that only applies to us and not you." Philomena's conversation eventually kept Sylvia from falling asleep on Tatsu's underbelly as she approaches Philomena, wearing her light ice dragon armor, and says it with an annoyed expression on her face, "I was trying to take a nap on Tatsu's underbelly, but you two, for some reason, decided to keep me awake. And I don't understand your problem, Philomena, with Natalia keeping us company. After all, didn't have to come here to protect Titania if she didn't have to, so at least be grateful. So if you two are just going to argue, do it somewhere else so I can sleep on Tatsu's comfy underbelly with some peace and quiet." Philomena then leaves Natalia alone as she says to herself, frustrated, "You really are a pain, Tanuki girl. You're going to expose yourself sooner or later, and then all your lies will come crashing down on you. Mark my words." After 2 days at maximum FTL speeds, Umbrio's flagship then docks in orbit over Celestia as he boards a landing ship alongside Filomena's Anamo Express and landed at Lancer Royal Spaceport. But due to Queen Poxera being preoccupied for a few days, the palace staff postponed Titania's audience with the Queen and formally apologizes. But to make it up to her, she called up the Moonlight Maiden of the Miquon, who was looking for guests to stay in her castles, and Miquon to take her in until then. And shortly afterwards, the regional turboprop aircraft showed up at the spaceport ready to transport Titania and her friends to Miku's castles in Miquon. Meanwhile, Umbrio returned to Lansara Repose to have an after-action talk with Queen Poxera about what had happened at Midway Station. While in front of Miku's castle waiting for Miku to come outside, Titania could feel the heat and humidity turning her hair to frizz as the bugs were buzzing in the grass. And as the sun set over the permanently snow-capped mountains, the sky turned to an exquisite glow of purple, orange, and golden clouds as the orange glow of the gas lanterns lit the castle walls. On one side of the courtyard, there was a late medieval statue with an inscription in medieval Selenese that read, Saint Arturos of Canterlot, the Crusader, Saviour of Selene, 1534 to 1589. On the other side of the courtyard was an ancient marble statue wearing a similar armor to Umbrio, with an ancient Selenese inscription that read, Servant of God, Chiorgori of Lansaro, patron saint of Selene, 154 to 210 Anno Domini. Following one more minute, Moonlight Maiden Mikusafora of the Miquon dynasty, dressed elegantly in her silk robes and walked gracefully, greeting Titania and her friends with a bow. Miku's servant then gave each of Titania's friends some hot porcelain cups with the sweet smell of jasmine tea and dumplings. Miku then says to Titania warmly, We are happy to have you come by and brought company along with you. For the entire time you are here, we will be our honored guests. We are preparing your dinner as we speak. Come in. We already have all sorts of things ready for your pleasure until dinner is served in the grand hall. Titania then bowed to Miku with the hand sign Artemis taught her to use in Miquon and answered, I am honored to be your guest, as Miku cracked a warm smile. Titania then followed Miku into her palace as she took in the pristine sights and sweet smells of cherry blossoms and roses in the courtyard. Once in the grand hall, there was a cherry wood table with the ornate carvings on the sides, legs, and chairs with red velvet cushions in the middle of the room. Then the room was lit by the soft glow of torches hanging from the jade pillars that held up the tile ceiling and the glistening chandelier hanging from the center. Miku then said to Titania, It is not very common we have visitors from outside Miquon. Allow the servants to show you to your rooms to a nice warm bath. I'm sure it must have been a long day traveling here, and I want to make sure you are all pampered until your hearts are content. Sylvia then immediately ran into the bathhouse and turned on the sauna while stripping off her armor and her clothes down to her underwear and took a relaxing bath. But the more she soaked in the hot steam and warm water, the more she felt her thick and tight muscles become wet noodles as Philomena, one bath over, was enjoying her scented soap and candles. Meanwhile, Natalia used the Beagle shampoo to clean the dirt out of her tanuki ears and tail and enjoying an ear cleaning from a lady with the ears and tail of a shih tzu. Then Natalia began to groan like a basset hound, having her ears cleaned as she fell asleep with contentment. And while Philomena, Titania, Sylvia, and Natalia were enjoying their spa treatment, Agron was drinking a warm canteen of Tatsu's thick and creamy dragon milk as she cuddled him. Tatsu then said to Agron gleefully, My milk sure tastes good, doesn't it? Before licking him in the ear like a Labrador. Agron then takes another drink from his canteen as he answered his dragon, I like it at least, and if we didn't grow up together, I might feel kind of weird drinking your milk. Tatsu then giggles as she says to Agron sweetly, I don't think I would ever let anyone but you or Sylvia milk me anyways. You two act hard on the outside, but really, you both are nice, big, and soft cinnamon rolls, and I like that. I think you two are cute and would make a cute couple. Think of it. The great hero Agron saving the day with his ice mage Sylvia, before winking and nudging Agron with the back of her claw. Agron then starts blushing as Titania grins, showing her big interlocking teeth. Sylvia then walks in on them both dressed in her armor and asks, with a most relaxed and content expression, smelling like lavender, Mind if I lie down next to you and take a nap before dinner? Agron then answered Sylvia, Sure, there's room on Tatsu's underbelly. Sylvia then answers sweetly, Thank you, before gently embracing Agron and kissing him on the cheek. And as she dozed off to sleep, the calming sounds of her deep breathing with Tatsu relaxed him to sleep as he rested Sylvia's head on his shoulder before finally giving her a kiss goodnight and dreaming sweet dreams. Following Umbriel's long meeting with Queen Poxera, Poxera was eager to take a bath and go to bed. And while she was changing into her nightgown, Edenthiel accidentally walked into the wrong bedroom looking for Artemis and saw Poxera half naked and the ugly scar on the side of her body. Edenthiel's face then turned red with embarrassment and tried to run out of the room, but Poxera told her to stop and beckoned for Edenthiel to come back, as she said calmly, It's not the first time someone has accidentally walked into me naked. The nymph maids do it all the time. Edenthiel then covers her face as she says, Sorry, Your Highness. I didn't mean to see you without your clothes on. Poxera then covers herself with a blanket as she apologizes. I'm sorry if my half-naked body disturbed you. You looked part nymph, and nudity is customary in the southern nymph valleys, so I didn't think it would bother you. But I realize you're my daughter's companion, Edenthiel, and if you don't mind, I'd like you to sit next to me while we have a chat about you and my daughter. Edenthiel then gulped, as she felt her heart pound with nervousness as Poxera smiled gently. Don't be nervous, dear. I just wanted you to know I really appreciate what you've been doing for Artemis while you're here. Normally she's a bit standoffish to me, but with you around, she seems much happier. She seems more like herself with you around, almost like the sweet and caring girl I knew she was when she was younger. Edenthiel then asked Poxera with a confused expression, Since when was she ever not sweet or caring? For as long as I've known her, she's always been that way. Poxera then becomes melancholy thinking about it as she answers, Perhaps you haven't known her long enough to know when she wasn't. Ever since she was removed from her father like all heirs to the Luna Queendom must do to fulfill their destiny, she has been nothing but reluctant to accept her role with a stubbornness like that of a beagle. Does she not care about her destiny and what's good for this queendom? Does she lack some sort of responsibility? If you know how to make her fulfill her destiny to rule this queendom and keep it safe from Zalshura, please, I need to know your secrets. Edenthiel then lifts her hands and tilts her head and asks, What secrets are you talking about? Me and Artemis don't keep secrets from each other, and I care about her just as much as she cares about me. We support each other, and I want her to find her way, even if that means it leads her away from me. I want that because I want what's best for her. And if she's my best friend and like an extended sister, that's a little crazy, but I like that about her. Edenthiel, you truly have a warm heart, but being the heir to the Speaker of Luna is predestined and not a choice. I know Artemis cares about her queendom, but I don't think it's her destiny to become Speaker of Luna, because it's up to her to decide her destiny, and being heir is not giving her any sense of peace or happiness. It is not her choice to choose her own destiny. Choosing your own destiny is a failed Zalshuran custom that brings nothing but chaos and manifestation of Zalara's wickedness. Is it? Aren't we all created equal in dignity and have desire to seek peace, love, and happiness? And how can peace, love, and happiness have any value without free will? I know it must be hard to see the evils Zulshura has done to your queendom because of free will. But with free will, both Zulshurans and everyone else is capable of redemption. Because of redemption, we all have a choice to accept peace, love, and happiness, and I beg you not to deny them. And even if she can't choose her own destiny and find her own way, how is she ever going to find any peace or happiness in her life? As Edenthiel pleaded with Paxura to choose liberty and look for the good within herself, Paxura noticed Edenthiel's steel cross necklace that slipped out of her dress and said to Edenthiel, "I appreciate you trying to help me, but I don't think you can. These are matters someone of your kind wouldn't understand. Now get some sleep. We're both going to need it for tomorrow as the city prepares for Artemis's upcoming coronation festival preparations." Edenthiel then left Paxura's present to find Artemis and sleep in the bed next to her. But while Artemis started thinking about the coronation, tears drained from her silver eyes as Edenthiel's heart sense could feel her sadness. And as Edenthiel felt her sadness, she lied down next to Artemis, gently stroking her silky dark hair, and as she laid her hands on Artemis's athletic body, she channeled her love magic into her, giving her a small sense of comfort and happiness, as she stopped crying while humming an Amorian lullaby. And as Artemis stopped crying, Edenthiel lied next to her the whole night, giving her comfort to never leave her friend alone when she needed her the most, just as a dog will never leave or abandon their owner in hard times. Chapter 20. Umbriel and Ariana. As the morning came, with the sunlight shining through the stained glass windows, the sun shone on Artemis's face, with Edenthiel by his side. But as she got out of bed, Edenthiel still lied in his bed sleeping. But instead of waking her up, she kissed her best friend on the cheek in standard Selenese fashion, as she dressed in camo and pants with a 9mm on her hip. Then she reached for the picnic basket under her bed along with her secret safe, and from the safes she grabbed her old Winchester rifle and a box of 30-30 and a few other belongings before leaving the palace through the secret exit. And after leaving the palace, she hiked 2.5 miles up to the top of the hill behind the palace overlooking New Lansaro City. And once at the top of the hill, she laid down her blanket and loaded her old 30-30 Winchester while sitting some of her belongings on the blanket. Of those belongings was a family photo with her father and her half-brother, and a bronze figure of her dog containing the ashes of her childhood Labrador retriever. After putting her belongings down, she stroked the head of the bronze dog figure and fondled her old Winchester before opening her picnic basket, saying, "If only you could have been here. Oh, how much I missed you all these years and forced to abandon you. It was you who loved me more than my mother. I still remember those times fondly when we were together, and yet I am cursed to be the heir to my mother's place. I never wanted money, power, or fame. I just want you back in my life with my sweet brother as part of my family. Yet my detestable relatives on my mother's side stand in the way of my happiness and care nothing about anyone but themselves and their own self-indulgence. I wouldn't even consider them family, let alone call them people, save Vixarina, who actually cares about me and has respect for the everyday person. And hopefully my brother and Edenthiel can make their love a reality and have a happy family together. I know she loves him and he loves her. If only my mother loved me and actually cared what I thought about things instead of forcing me to be someone I'm not. Maybe that's why you left me with the Winchester and Jeremiah with the revolver, where we together can end the ones who started our suffering. And the more I see Mother Luna show her true nature, and the more I see my almost sister Edenthiel live happily in her Christ, despite her struggles, the more I doubt my own religion." And as Artemis continued to reminisce of old times, a beagle and an elven basset hound accompanied her as the elven basset hound began sticking its big nose in the picnic basket looking for food. Artemis then tries to move Basset's head out of the picnic basket, But the beagle only makes things more difficult while also sticking its nose in the basket and stealing a bread loaf. But rather than run off with the bread loaf, the beagle sat down in front of Artemis with the basset hound and tore the loaf in three and shared it with her. Artemis then petted both the beagle and the basset as their owner, Umbriel, came and sat down. But instead of striking up a conversation, Artemis just covered her face with a cowgirl hat and remained silent. Umbriel then said to Artemis, "You know it's me, Artemis. You don't have to hide yourself from your Kigoi." Artemis then asked Umbriel quietly, "Why did you come here?" To which Umbriel answered softly, "I came out on to walk my elven basset hound and beagle, and both followed your scent here on their own. Both seem to like you, and I hear somewhere that dogs know how to find good people." Umbriel's beagle then starts licking Artemis's ear while the basset hound knocks off her hat as she pushes the hounds away from her. Then the hounds lied on the ground, looking at her with wide eyes as Artemis said, "Umbriel, can I ask you something?" Umbriel then answered in a fatherly tone, "If you have any questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability." Artemis then took a deep breath as she asked, "I know my mother has barred me from speaking to you about spiritual matters because you're a Christian, but you and Edenthea are the only people that seem to care enough to completely be honest with me. So, what I'm about to ask is the highest treason I could commit against my own bloodline. So I need you to promise not to tell anyone in my family about our conversation." That was a bit melodramatic, but I promise. "However, why would you consider asking me spiritual questions as an act of treason against your family?" "It's because it's mandated by Luna that my bloodline be a Vertok bloodline, and if any my noble house disowned my cousin Vixarina for the removal of Luna's temples in Caroline and conversion to Christianity. But as such, her entire province has made powerless in the royal court and will have no say in the Lunar Queendom for her defiance to Luna and the 13 goddesses of nature. Then riddle me this. Why would you, as a noble house, persecute any group of people? Or to make things more tangible, an almost perfect analogy would be the collapse of the Zalshuran Empire. Why did the ancient Zalshuran Empire collapse? What does Zalshura have to do with the Selene when Selene is nothing like Zalshura? You, like most people, underestimate its value, but understanding what led to the ancient Zalshura's collapse is relevant to your noble house. Like the House of Lansaro has ruled this queendom for 1,200 years, the Zalshuran emperors of the line of Cornelius ruled Zalshuran Empire for 700 years. But do you know what led to the collapse of the empire and led to the medieval 12 kingdoms of Zalshura? It was nothing other than the rise of Christianity and the removal of the Zalshuran pagan customs, most importantly, which was no longer worshipping the emperor. And as the more Christian practices became ingrained with ancient Zalshuran culture, the more the empire decentralized to the point where the emperor had no real power and the power was spread out across the 12 provinces and eventually became their own kingdoms. But unlike Zalshura, Christianity not only threatens the Vertok concept of divine right of queens, but has also questioned the legitimacy of the very institutions that maintain their political power. Is there any wonder why the Moonlight Maidens would have made the Bible illegal, which contains the concept of unjust laws not being laws and how it speaks of many of their works and that their works are evil? Now you're starting to sound like my art teacher in my American high school who was a veteran of the Second Civil War. He had stories from when he served in the Union Army against the communist secessionists. And sometimes I think those are better times when I was younger when my family was whole. At least now I have some idea why the noble house opposes Christianity. And what is that idea? I think it's because they're corrupt and only care about power with no empathy for others. And even now that I have discovered their motivations for exploiting their subjects, why do I still doubt my faith in Luna and the Vertok scriptures? Why am I drawn to Edenthiel, who loves Jesus more than anything, and repulsed by the Vertok practitioners in my own religion? Umbriel then answered calmly, Only you can answer that for yourself. So I ask you this. What separates Edenthiel from the Vertok practitioners, if you don't mind me asking? Artemis then starts to shed tears as she answers, For one, Edenthiel doesn't seem like she has an evil bone in her whole body and forgives people that have wronged her unjustly. There's just this wholesome, free-spirited energy field around her, like I could be vulnerable with her and she won't hurt me. Might even say I'm in love with Edenthiel, like she's a part of my own heart. Yet, when I'm with the Vertok High Priestess preparing for my upcoming coronation, I only feel scared and like I'm inadequate. In the Vertok Temple, I feel like I'm in prison. Like my life doesn't mean anything except to advance Luna's cause against some Zalshurans I don't even know anything about. I don't even care about fighting Zalshura anymore, not after seeing the horror the Vertok Matrix brought upon this whole queendom. Zalshura isn't even my enemy anymore. These evil entities are. Umbriel then looked at Artemis with empathetic, fatherly eyes as he said to her, wiping the tear stains from her eyes, I can understand what you're feeling. I felt the same way when I left the Vertok life a long time ago. As Artemis felt Edenthiel's healing presence coming from Umbriel also. Umbriel then said to Artemis in a fatherly manner, Let me tell you a story, princess. When I was Diana's Kigori, I was tasked with destroying Zalshura during the war to end all wars, and taught to hate Zalshurans as less than people. As time went on, defeat after defeat in battle, I realized I was forced to defend a position with no reinforcements coming, and I was wounded with no one to rescue me, and I was forced to surrender to the Zalshurans. Umbriel then lifted her shirt, showing the war scars as he continued, And my whole army was captured by the Zalshurans. I thought since I was their top general for certain they would kill me, and they had every right to. After all, I had ordered my army to kill their sons and use their prisoners to make weapons to kill their brothers on the front line. But despite what I had done to them, Umbriel then started to show a soft spot in his heart as he said, It was a Zalshuran medic that saved my life. When the Vertok Matriarchs had abandoned me, this medic had forgiven me and helped me survive being a prisoner of war before he was transferred to another prison camp. And it was in that prison camp I realized how much the Vertok had lied to me about Zalshura, and so much else. I guess that's why they don't show you the face of the enemy you're fighting before you sending your sons off to die in a pointless war. It was the mercy of this medic and the sharing of the Gospels that led me to where I am in Christ today. But it is your choice whether or not you choose the path I have chosen. Artemis then answered Umbriel confidently, If your Christ is willing to spare me like he spared you from the Vertok suffering, I want to give my life over to him and be spared from any of my own inadequacy. Show me the door to my salvation that I will walk through it. And from thereforth, do not call me by my Vertok name of Artemis anymore, but with the name my father gave me, Ariana Diane Johnson, daughter of Samuel of Zalshura. And so it shall be done. And after she had made her confession of faith, Umbriel had brought forth a minister to baptize Ariana in the Lunsara River, as was done since ancient times. And after being baptized, she donned the Selenese silver cross around her neck to never remove it before the rest of her life. And in her abandonment of the Vertok way of life, she found freedom in Christ. And in Christ, she vowed to wear her high treason to the Vertok theocracy as a badge of honor.
Chapter 21. The Journey of Jeremiah. Jeremiah and the Nymph. As Apollyon crossed saw the border of the lunar queendom in the southern valleys of the Nymphs, and on his way to Lunsara Palace on horseback, he thought to himself, After I finish this bounded contract to end the life of Paxura, I'll finally have peace, knowing she won't be able to hurt anyone anymore. And with that peace, I will no longer need to wear my fake persona of Apollyon the gunslinger. I'll finally be able to return to the Jeremiah McCreed Johnson I used to be. My sister will be avenged, and so will the people of this queendom." And after he had traveled all day on his horse, he tied the horse to a fence post next to some hay, sleeping with his cowboy hat covering his face. And as he woke up from his sleep, he found a naked nymph asking him if he was all right, with some food in her hand held out to him. And as he took the fruit from her hand, she said to him, "It's not very often we have men come through our valley. I hope you don't mind if I show you some hospitality while you're here." Jeremiah then awkwardly answered the sun-tanned nymph, "Thank you, but can you please put some clothes on first?" Nymph then answered, "Sure thing," before putting on a bikini and serving Jeremiah some wholesome food, and asked, "So what brings you to our valley?" and holding his hand with both of hers. Jeremiah then slips his hand out from the nymph's grasp and answers, "I'm going to see some of the Lunsarrow, some family I haven't seen in a long time," before taking a drink from his grape juice. The nymph then responded, "That's nice. In our valley, all us nymphs are like a big family, even if it is all female except for a few elves and Selenese men here and there. But we do like to treat men to a pleasurable experience in our valley. Mind if I treat you while you're here?" "No thanks." "Why not? Am I not beautiful enough?" "Tell the truth, you're gorgeous, but I already have a fiancée waiting for me in Lunsarrow." "Very well. I hope she enjoys your company as much as I have. I'll pack some food for your trip to Lunsarrow, handsome." The nymph then packed some food into Jeremiah's saddlebag before taking the bikini back off and waving goodbye, then returned to tend to her livestock. And while riding away, Jeremiah thought to himself, "The nymphs always have seemed to be super generous with their hospitality. I wish her the best, even though I don't understand why Selenese nymphs love nudity so much." Jeremiah and the Moonlight Maiden of Aquarius. As the day went by, another day reaching the northern part of the nymph valleys, almost to the province of Euphrasia, Jeremiah looked for a place to spend the night and tied his horse to the pole of a seemingly abandoned cottage. And when he woke up, he found a regally dressed nymph cuddling him, and that looked like the Moonlight Maiden of the southern valleys of the nymphs. And when the regal nymph said to him in a sweet demeanor, "Hey, cutie, you're finally awake," before kissing him, Jeremiah then pushed the nymph away and asked her, "Why did you kiss me without asking?" To which the regally dressed nymph responded, "As the Moonlight Maiden of the southern valleys of the nymphs, I thought you were cute and wanted to give you some affection. I don't get many male visitors and wanted to treat you to something special. I can treat you to some other forms of affection if you like." Jeremiah then answered her, "I already have a fiancée waiting for me in Lunsarrow. I'd rather not cheat on her with another woman. In that case, I won't try to get romantic with you, 'cause you don't want me to, even though I am very good at it. But if you'd like me to pack a little wedding gift for your fiancé, I can give you some of our finest nymph teas and pearl earrings, and a few herbal potions to make your nights a little more romantic." Jeremiah then looked at the regally dressed nymph confused and answered, Thanks. It's no big deal, and I hope you can enjoy the upcoming Coronation Festival. I know I'll be there." Then as Jeremiah mounted his horse, the regal nymph packed a pair of pearl earrings for Edenthiel, as well as some nymph teas and a few herbal potions for romance. But before Jeremiah left her, she made him some warm loaves of bread for the ride. And as Jeremiah rode away on his horse, she waved goodbye to him as she thought to himself, "In all this time I thought the Moonlight Maidens were horrible people, but that nymph seemed pretty nice, even if she was super horny. But I guess all nymphs are super horny during their spring and early summer mating seasons. That's it. I'm tearing up her bounty contract. Jeremiah then pulled out the bounty contract for the Moonlight Maiden of the Nymphs and used the Sunslab magic to burn up her contract and threw the ashes in the river as his horse stopped to take a drink. Jeremiah, the stranger in town. As Jeremiah continued to travel north on his horse, he had to take a detour northwest through Amazonia, a land of the voluptuous warrior women, because the mountains bordering the nymph valleys in elven Euphasia were impassable by everything except Alaskan Malamute and Amazonian husky. As Jeremiah continued to trek northwest through Amazonia, he could feel the cold biting through his hands as he looked for shelter until he came across a small village of not more than 100 people, where the men had left to hunt for food. As Jeremiah warmed his hands by the fire and put his gloves, a group of voluptuous Amazon warrior women wielding bone spears and crossbows, with hatchets on their wide hips, demanded of him, "Who are you, and why have you come to our village? Are you a scout raider on our village? If you are, we won't hesitate to shoot your back full of arrows. Answer us!" Jeremiah then turns around with his hands where the women could see them, and when the women could see that he wasn't a raider, but a man traveling looking for shelter, women lowered their weapons with the leader of the women saying, "Come inside, traveler. I'll fix you a couple hot cider in my tavern to warm you up inside." And as the warrior women took care of his horse, the leader of the women warmed up a cup of cider on a wood stove and sat down in the chair across from him. She then took off a deerskin pelt jacket, revealing the contours of her toned, muscular body. Then the strong woman asked Jeremiah, "You don't seem like you're from around here. Where did you come from anyway?" Jeremiah remained silent for a minute before answering, "I came from the Nymph Valleys, traveling northward towards Nunsaro." The woman then laughed, saying, "Let me guess. You left the Nymph Valleys because the nymphs made your balls too happy." "Excuse me?" "So, you're saying you didn't have sex with any gorgeous nymphs? That's odd. The only reason any man goes to the Nymph Valleys is to get laid by a crowd of horny nymphs, because they have no men in their society. But you don't seem like the type of travelers that come to my village of warrior women looking to sleep with them, even though all the warrior women in my village are married and have kids. So, good for you. I don't have to break your pelvis. Which is what we normally do to men that try to sleep with our warrior women, that are not their husbands. You're also dressed like you're from Caroline. With that wide brim hat and oversized belt buckle, you have a Caroline personality." "I have relatives in Caroline." "Oh, I see. But why leave the freedom paradise of Caroline for Memorable Amazonia? All we have here is a bunch of snow and a leader who still thinks it's the Union of Lunar Communist Republics." "I came here as a detour because there's no way past the Ephesian mountain range without a team of Amazonian huskies or Alaskan Malamutes. All I have is my horse and myself, and my horse would freeze to death in that mountain weather. By the way, where are the men in your village?" The woman then takes a shot of warm vodka as she answers, "My husband is leading a party of men of our village in hunt for food with the young men and a bunch of hounds. But with the raiders out there, us women had to build up our bodies into fighting shape without all the men around all the time." The woman then pulled up a sleeve flexing a very beefy arm as she says, "And you see that? That is all the meat our village eats and years of physical labor and rearing 3 children, with many more on the way. I'd give anything to protect them, and would not hesitate to kill a raider that would try to harm them. I need to be this strong to protect my children's futures, and my warrior women almost mistook you for a raider, which would have been a disaster." Jeremiah then unloads his revolver and puts it on the wood counter and says, "That's why I carry one of these. God made man, and Sam Colt made man equal." The strong woman then smiled as she said, "You really are from Caroline, since no one else is allowed to own guns. I also see that you're Christian, just like us in this village with that cross around your neck. So I don't need to hold you being from Caroline against you. Our insufferable Moonlight Maiden may hate your people, but I don't.
And to refresh will see an outsider that's not a degenerate socialist or their talk idolater. Our village cannot afford anyone not doing their part and betraying our Orthodox Christian founding. If your people in the village will not work, neither will they eat. Perhaps if my husband comes back tomorrow, you can meet him, if you don't leave too early.
Jeremiah then finishes his hot cider and says to the woman, "Oh boy, my tired. If you know where I can get some sleep, please let me know."
Don't worry. I'll get you some animal skins for you to sleep on. And if you need anything else, just ask.
The woman then gives Jeremiah some animal skins as he falls asleep on them. And as he fell asleep, the woman grabs some extra animal skins and covered him and put a pillow under his head. Jeremiah and the raiders. As the morning came, the woman from the tavern had shaken Jeremiah panicked as her son had gone missing. And as she led him outside, he grabbed his lever action 30-30 as another woman was ringing the bell at the town square warning of a raid. As the raiders stood in a standoff with the woman of the town square, the leader of the raiders held the woman of the tavern's son in chains and demanded,
Women of this town, you either give my raiders half your resources, or you will never see your precious son again.
But before the warrior women could act, Jeremiah stood between the warrior women and the raiders while motioning for the women to stay back, as he said to the raider holding the child, "Listen to me. I don't know who you are, but let that child free and never come back to this village ever again, and you and your raiders can go free. But harm that child, and you will not like what happens next." Jeremiah then chambered around his Marlin rifle, as the raiders held a knife to the child's neck, as the head raider said, "Order what?" Jeremiah then shot the head raider in the bicep with a 30-30, completely blowing off his arm, and then shoots him in the chest, making him fall off his horse. Jeremiah then continues to shoot each raider in the chest until his 30-30 is empty. Then he switches to a .357 Magnum revolver and failing the hammer as he fired 6 shots, hitting each raider in the chest until all surviving raiders ran off. And as the head raider lied on the ground squirming and whimpering without an arm, he coughed up silver blood and said, "You only fired 6 shots. You have no more." To which Jeremiah responded, "It's a Smith & Wesson. I have a 7th shot, just for you." Jeremiah then pulled the hammer back on his revolver and blew the head raider's head wide open. And after the raiders were dead, the mother ran to her son, holding him crying as the men of the village had returned with the meat from their hunting expedition, wearing wolf pelts and counted a dozen elk carcasses, and to last the whole month. And when the chieftain of the hunters had seen what Jeremiah had done, he said to Jeremiah,
"Because you have slain the raiders that have terrorized our village for years, we are forever in your debt. Let us celebrate this day in honor of the man who saved our village."
And following the chieftain's words, the woman of the tavern hugged Jeremiah tightly with a muscular body, with tears of joy in her eyes before cutting open an elk carcass for Jeremiah to eat. And as the celebration continued with the busted open head of the head raider on a pike with the raiders' bodies burned, Jeremiah rode off into the sunset, without anyone in the village knowing his name. Jeremiah, the Basset, and the Elven Princess. After purchasing an animal skin and sleeping bag and better horse saddle from the Amazonian village, he rode off to the Elven Euphasia to make a quick pit stop and enjoy a few sights before heading off to Lansaro. And as he got closer to Euphasia and out of Amazonia, he noticed that the horse rails had changed from dirt to cobblestone. And on the countryside, zero cabins dotting the rolling hills and farmland just planting their crops. Jeremiah then thought to himself, "The more I travel across the lunar queendom, the more I'm beginning to question my choice to take on this bounty. What good will it do to kill the queen and plunge this queendom into a pointless civil war, where the people here have been nothing but kind to me? And even though I still hate Poxera and she deserves to die, these people don't. I'm not even sure if I had the will to kill her anymore, knowing my sister will take her place, and she will no longer have any power to hurt these people. These people don't deserve to suffer because of my vendetta against my own stepmother. And as Jeremiah sat down in an alleyway in Elvenbosset Town, accompanied him and his horse, as he asked the Basset Town, "Are you lost like me, buddy?" before letting the dog sniff him and petting his wrinkly head. Then the Basset Town lay down on Jeremiah's lap, with sad eyes as Jeremiah gave the dog a bone. And when he noticed the green collar around its neck, he saw the dog tag with its name and owner's address. He then said to the elven Basset Town, while putting a rope around the dog's body as the makeshift leash, "Let's take you home, buddy." Jeremiah then walked his dog all the way across the city until he finally came across a grand palace that matched the address on the dog's collar. And when he had approached the gate, 2 armed guards in elven green uniforms stepped in front of him and demanded, "What is your business for approaching Her Royal Highness' property, commoner?" Jeremiah, while restraining his annoyance, answered, "This dog has a collar with his address on it, so I took it here to return him to his owner." One of the guards then accuses Jeremiah, saying, "So do you admit to stealing Her Majesty's elven Basset Hound?" "No, 'cause I didn't steal this dog. This dog found me in an alleyway, and I'm just trying to return this dog to his owner." One of the guards then pulls out a pair of cuffs and says, "I'm afraid I'm going to have to arrest you for trespassing." Jeremiah then picks up the elven Basset Hound, showing the guards the collar, and says, "See, this address is on this dog's collar." But before the guards could cuff Jeremiah for trespassing, a pretty elf girl shouted at the guards, "Stop it! Don't arrest this one who has just found my sweet Robespierre, and let him in." Jeremiah then muttered under his breath, "You better not arrest me, jackass," as the guard led Jeremiah into the palace grounds while concealing his loaded big iron. And as he steps on the palace grounds, the pretty elf girl ordered her butler to get some fresh baguettes and buns from the kitchen and opened a bottle of champagne, giving a glass to Jeremiah. Then the elf girl said to Jeremiah endearingly, "Robespierre seems to like you. I think your kind is cute wearing that Caroline commoner attire. There's something charming about the attire of the low caste." Jeremiah then took a sip of his champagne as the elf girl said, "You're holding your wine glass improperly. And do you know who I am?" Jeremiah then gives no expression to the elf girl and says, "I don't even know who you are. I was just trying to return your Basset Hound." "Elven Basset Hound. There's a difference, you know. I'm appalled by your ignorance." "What did you expect? I don't live in Euphasia."
"Then I ought to introduce you to our former king's custom. I am Princess Marie, daughter of Louis VIII of the former kingdom of Euphasia, and I am the moonlight maiden that represents the enlightenment sect of the Varrock, and Euphasia before Her Highness Royal Speaker of Luna, Queen Paxura. So that means my royal family is at the center of Euphasian society and culture. Whatever I say goes. Got it, Caroline boy?"
"I guess I can start calling Euphasia Marie's Burger King. Have it your way."
For your information, I do not eat burgers. Burgers are nothing more than heavy in American food. I'd much rather have frog legs."
Marie, they have frog legs in America too. You know that, right?"
"That's Princess Marie to you, and even if they do,
They probably can't even cook them right. Jeremiah then thought to himself, you might not be bounty contract worthy, but you could use a real slap in the face, bitch. Marie then grabs a baguette from the butler and cuts a slice for herself with the dab of olive oil and says, jealous on? That I'm a pretty and you can't have a princess because of your low status. Jeremiah then crosses his arms and grabs some tobacco and a bounty hunter contract for Marie and starts smoking it. Then Jeremiah responded with a straight no, while lowering his cowboy hat. Marie then sits in a pretty girl pose as she teases, oh, don't lie, dearie. You know you like me. Jeremiah then lifts his hat up and says straight to her, to be honest, you sound like a bitch with that attitude. Marie then gasps as she gets up and says, just wait until my parents find out you've spoken to me, peasant. And as Marie was marching through the palace doors, the automatic sprinklers turned on as she slipped and fell into a puddle of mud, wearing her most expensive dress and shoes. And with that, Jeremiah shouts, thanks, Marie, for the free baguette and champagne. I sure enjoyed it. Before mounting up on his horse again and rode to New Lanzaro city in the entire province of Lanzaro.
Chapter 22. The Preparations. When King Azrael of the Void Kingdom had heard the news of Emilia of Firm's capture, he thought to himself, about time I got rid of that general who constantly disagreed with my edicts and opposed my absolute rule. And now in that prison where disposable generals belong, I can begin my new plan. He has already served his purpose, and sacrificing a general who wasn't even of royal blood is only a bonus to add on top of that. So I say good riddance. Now, this is where you come into play, Prince Darius. To pick up and gain victory where Emilio's sacrifice left off. And because of your royal blood, you will receive true soldiers that I would not let be tainted by Emilio's common serf blood. In the royal tea parlor of Lansaro Palace, Ariana and Edenthio were eating breakfast as Edenthio was training Ariana on how to treat her servants well as Edenthio instructed. I guess since you joined the Lord's family, I'm trying to set a good example here. And don't think I've ever taught anyone how to live a Christian life before, so I'm not really sure where to start. There's just so much to cover and not enough time. Oh, I think I got an idea. Since you're going to rule this queendom in 2 weeks, I think we should start with leadership and how every good leader should put the needs of her servants before herself. After all, Jesus taught, let the greatest among you be servant of all. Ariana then took a bite out of her bread lathered in extra virgin olive oil and balsamic vinegar and answered, I guess that's why the Zalshuran say, let the king be the slave of the people. But the more you explain these things to me, the more I understand why you do the things you do. And that reminds me, I'm going to be inviting your family and Mrs. Abigail to the coronation festival, but only if you want me to. What do you say? Considering my family, apart from myself and my sister, have never left the Fey Kingdom, and have only gone so far as the borders of the Elf Kingdom and New Hawaii northwest of the Fey Kingdom, it would serve my family good to get a well-deserved vacation. They work too hard and need some time off. I also talked to my mom about you, and she says she would like to meet this girl named Artemis. Please call me Ariana from now on. I know it's awkward having called me by my old name all these years, but I'd much rather be called by the name my father raised me with. Very well, Sister Ariana. I'm sure they would enjoy the luxuries your queendom has to offer, since the Fey Kingdom is not a first world country. And neither is my queendom. The only reason it seems first world is because we're in the capital city, and once you leave the city limits, it looks like a second or third world country until you reach Miquon or Caroline. If you've ever been to the province of Amazonia, you'd see what I mean. All things I never knew before about your kingdom. Like how the elves here are just as snobby as the elves born in the Fey Kingdom. However, that might just be an elf thing, though. Drinking all the expensive champagne, eating baguette all day with no work ethic. If you know why I don't like elves, His cousin Elf only wanted to dance with me at a school dance because he thought I had nice breasts and was an easy catch. Of course, my big brother was there and slugged that Elf across the face for what he got suspended for, even though that Elf deserved to be the pervert he was. Not gonna lie, you do have nice boobs though. At least my brother loves you for more than your appearance and actually cares about you. I hate seeing how the Vertok nobles treat you solely because of your social status, and that you're prettier than them because they're so inbred and full of plastic surgery that even Alabama would find it disgusting. Identhil then looked like she was about to vomit as she said, "Why did you just have to ruin my fairy tales of my childhood telling me that Prince Charming was probably a royal inbred? Now I think I'm going to get sick and throw up." Hey, at least my mom didn't marry within the royal family, so I wouldn't inherit a lot of the genetic disorders that run in my bloodline. It's probably why I'm not deformed and don't need all that plastic surgery they need to look right. Just like how Umbriel and Vixarina didn't come from complete royal bloodlines and aren't much better off for it. I guess it's why marrying your cousin is illegal. By the way, have you thought any more about who you invite to your coronation? I have, and I would like to invite your family and a few people that my mother wouldn't approve of in any normal circumstance. That includes, but is not limited to, my own father, the president of Zalshura, because I hope to end the cultural conflict my queendom has with Zalshura that my mother refuses to let go of. And even if it doesn't work out that my queendom's intangible conflict with Zalshura ends, at least there was an effort made towards that prospect. I see no reason to continue this hatred of everything Zalshuran just because of a war that ended 143 years ago, because no Zalshuran is alive today from that era by at least 5 generations. If there's anything I learned growing up in America, you don't judge people based on what their ancestors may have done 200 years ago. I'm sick and tired of being forced to hate people who did nothing to me personally just because of their ancestors, because it's nothing more than archaic tribalism wearing a silver crown and pretending it's not. I think I might be onto something, but I guess it's what makes you a dachshund and a flock of lambs. So let's begin writing invitations to people. I'll go first. Identhil then picked up a silver pen and a piece of parchment paper addressed to Namor family on 788 Baker Street, Sylvania Grove, Fey Kingdom. And when she finished writing the address, Ariana grabbed the pen and wrote down, "Dear family of my good companion Identhil and Namor and Queen Abigail, you are invited to the Royal Coronation Festival of the Lunar Queendom on May 11th, 2100. All of your expenses will be paid for by the Royal House of Lansaro. But remember to hold on to this invitation as proof when asked by the palace staff. The palace ball is invite only, and anyone without an invitation and is not a member of the palace staff will be immediately removed. But being the decent family my companion Identhil says you are, I doubt you will have any trouble. However, it is recommended that you wear something elegant, and although I will not care if you do not dress nicely, the royal family will. And if you do not have any nice clothes, the palace staff will provide you with some if you request them. And although you may know me as Princess Artemis of the Lunar Queendom of House Lansaro, my name from now on will be Ariana. We are both looking forward to your arrival. Yours truly, Ariana Diane Lansaro and Identhil and Namor." Ariana then seals the letter with wax as she stamps the hot wax with the imperial seal of the Lunar Queendom to make it official. Then the next letter was addressed to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest, Washington, D.C., 20,500, and written, "To President Ronald Jackson, I understand your schedule is very busy and you have a lot of responsibilities to attend to, but you are invited to Lansaro Palace for the Coronation Festival. I also understand you will not go anywhere without your Secret Service agents, so I will make an exception. The President of the Confederate Republic of Zalshura will also be there, and I hope you can come to an agreement to end the American-Zalshuran War. And even if he does not show up, at least there is a free food and booze. Your choice, the future Queen of the Lunar Queendom." Then Ariana moved on to the letter to the President of Zalshura, writing, "To the first amongst equals of the nation that has vexed my mother. I understand if you choose not to come to the Coronation Festival, because Queen Poxer will be there, but perhaps I can entice you. I am writing this letter to you because I want to make amends between my future queendom and Zalshura for the animosity my mother holds between us. I hold no such enmity, and when I take my mother's place, she will no longer have the power to stop us from reconciling our two great nations. And just as importantly, the President of the United States will be there, and I have called him here hoping that you both will be present and come to an agreement to end the Zalshuran-American War. I seek peace between our three nations, without the need for mutually assured destruction. I hope you can make it. Sincerely, Ariana of Lansaro. Ariana then hesitantly seals the letter with uncertainty until putting the imperial seal on the wax and adding the letter to the letter pile. Edenthiel then asked Ariana with a concerned expression, "Is something wrong?" Ariana then answered, "I'm just a little worried that the damage my mother has caused between my queendom and Zalshur will reflect on me. I'm afraid Zalshur won't think I'm being sincere in my letter, even though I am. Then that's their loss. I know you and believe you, but perhaps things like this can only heal with time. I'm afraid you might be right, even though I hope you're wrong." Ariana then continued to write the invitations and letters for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, in the Temple of Luna and her pantheon, a green fire blazed in the most sacred chamber lined with silver engravings. On one side of the chamber was an engraving of the Veritok story of creation, and on the other side of the chamber was a silver engraving of the end of the world with the goddess Luna striking the last son of Solara through the heart. And in the center stood the silver statue of Luna with a table of burnt offerings. As the high priestess Vixentio had made her burnt offering, she inquired of the flame, "I sense a spiritual change within the heart of the heir to the throne. She no longer brings you burnt offerings, nor does she have any reverence to you or the goddesses, but acts as if she were a son of Solara. What happened to her?" And as she asked the green fire the question, figures appeared in the fire as that of Edenthiel and Umbriel and a certain Zalshuran. Then Vixentio asked the fire, "Who is this figure of the Zalshuran that poisoned Artemis?" And after she had asked the fire about the Zalshuran, an apparition of the Vertog goddess of wisdom, Versifeth, answered her, "The Zalshuran you speak of is within this queendom, but do not underestimate his power when you face him. He will be expecting you, and is one of the greatest fighters among mortals. And his Sunslayer magic is strongest at high noon, and will attempt to slay Luna's vessel Paxura, and then Luna. But you have the power to stop this son of Solara if you prepare." The apparition of Versifeth then disappeared as Vixentio wrote a letter to Paxura and put it in the talons of a messenger falcon, warning her within her vision. And when Paxura had read the letter, she said to herself, "I should have known you would come for me eventually, Jeremiah. You want revenge, don't you? I know you are still out there waiting for the perfect time to strike me and my queendom down, but you will not succeed. My daughter will take my place and be stronger than the both of us, and was so perfect in Luna's ways, you cannot possibly convert her. You may have won temporarily by shooting me in the side of my body, but afterwards, I have already won. If you strike the queen, you must kill her, and you never did. And now you never will. And when my royal guard shall find you, you shall be executed on sight. And they say you need 2 graves for revenge, one for yourself and one for your vengeance. But I only need one, an unmarked shallow grave for you as I go on living." 2 days went by since Ariana mailed her invitation to the president of Zalshura, and after the letter had been thoroughly inspected for hazardous materials, the president's aide said, "Mr. President, you have some mail addressed to you personally." The president then takes the letter from his aide and notices the Selenese imperial seal, and says to his aide, "Wow, has to be at least 25 administrations since any president has gotten a letter from these people." Then the president reopens the broken seal and reads it through it and says, "Looks like I've been invited to some important festival by some girl named Ariana." And she seems like she's acting in good faith, although there's this awkward moment, trying to normalize relations with the Luna Queendom when we've been enemies on paper for so long. Not that I hate Selenese people or anything, because I don't. I just hate the regime that has ran that beautiful country into the ground for 1,000 years, and how they forced Zolstro to nearly commit genocide because their royals wouldn't surrender. But at least Umbriel stuck around for all these years, where the war to end all wars might have lasted much longer without his cooperation. But since the President of America is also going to be there, I'm going to need an entire Army Brigade, Space Force anti-dreadnought fleet, and an Air Force battalion constantly flying overhead while I'm in the Luna Queendom. The aide then asked the President, "Doesn't that seem a bit excessive? Couldn't you just get by with your regular Secret Service agents?" "Not at all when you consider the President of America is going to show up in an Andrew Jackson-class dreadnought knowing I'm going to be there. And hopefully all goes well and no physical conflict ensues with mutual instruction guaranteed. After all, I expect this to go well with this Ariana girl so long as the Bounty Hunter Guild stays within its constitutional boundaries and does not set up bounties on anyone in the Luna Queendom. Not only would it be bad diplomacy, but it is also an act of war crime under the Inu Convention, and it's unconstitutional. There is no war unless Congress and the Senate declare it, and assassinating a nation's leader is an act of war, even if it is someone as awful as Queen Poxera, whom we know is going to be there. But apart from Poxera, I've got a little something for you since you've been working so hard all week." The President then pulls out his checkbook and writes his aide a $200 check and says, "Take your family out to a nice dinner. You deserve it." As Jeremiah was by himself, he looked at the revolver his father had given him and the incomplete notch next to Poxera's name. And as he looked at his revolver thinking about Poxera, he remembered the time when he shot her. He remembered when he missed all but the last shot with Full Metal Jackets as Poxera had dragged his sister from him and his father, and the uncontrollable rage flowing through his veins. And as he thought back on those painful memories, he felt his hand tightly clench the handle of his revolver. But thinking about his future life with Edenthio, his grip softened as his anger somewhat soothed. Jeremiah then thought to himself, "I know what I have to do, Edenthio, but because I love you, I'm not sure if I have the will to do it. You would hate me for taking the life of another, even if it is someone as cruel as Poxera, who ripped her own daughter from her own father, whom she loved the most. But then again, there aren't quite many options apart from vigilante justice, and I doubt the royal family will prosecute and imprison one of their own. But maybe there's a small chance something will happen, when my sister will take her place. She hated my stepmother ever since she ripped her from her father's arms, even if she didn't say it out loud out of fear for her life. What kind of ungodly monster intentionally destroys life of her own children's future with no regard for her children's well-being? And if you, Poxera, are not penitent and punished in this life, I will revel when your body and soul are cast into the lake of fire in the next." And as Jeremiah looked at his warped reflection in the river, the moonlight maiden of nymphs came up behind him and gently hugged him as she asked, "So, did you meet your fiancée yet?" Jeremiah turned to see the nymph as she let go of him and answered, "I've only talked to her on the phone as of now. I was seeing her at the coronation festival where I plan to propose to her. It's been a while since I've seen you." "Likewise, and I saw you were lonely, so I wanted to cheer you up, even though I was just walking along the river to breathe some fresh air outside the city." "That's understandable. You nymphs always were sweethearts." The regal nymph then laughed as she said, "Well, your kind is pretty charming, and I can see that cross around your neck, and even though Her Highness has made that symbol illegal, I don't care. It was your kind that didn't treat us nymphs as women that just exist to have sex with and leave us when we got pregnant. That's why I treated you so kindly back in my valley. And if I'm honest here, I've also left the Veritalk a long time ago because there was no love in it apart from making babies to be slaves of the higher castes. Us nymphs need love, and we have only found true love in your kind of community. And I'm sorry if I got a little too frisky. I'm just hard time restraining myself, but being a nymph, I get very strong urges in spring and early summer because that's a nymph's mating cycle. I hope you can understand that." "I do. My fiancée is of the Amorian race, from the Fey Kingdom, where her race is mostly human with a little bit of nymph and Fey genetics and capable of extremely powerful love magic. She also tends to get slightly more lovey-dovey in the spring and summer as well due to her partial nymph ancestry. So I'm no stranger to it. At least you understand. And your fiancé sounds lovely. I hope you will have a happy marriage and family as the years go by. If I'm being honest here, most of those herbal potions I gave you are for healing of certain ailments, but also give you the property of making you smell nice. So, what exactly did you do as a Moonlight Maiden? Well, I mainly represent the Nymph Valleys at the Royal Court, although I actually do is more along the lines of healing people using my herbal potions, apothecary, and nature magic. Unlike many outsiders, we don't fully understand the concept of government or national identity, and are mostly, as you outsiders might say, tribal. Us nymphs care more about love and shared principles than we do about nationality. That's something I can't legally say to Paxo's face because I would rather make love and not war. Yet she would rather hold on to a war that ended 143 years ago, because she doesn't know true love or her purpose in life, and has for over a century fallen prey to the Vertox demonic teaching. When I'm in private, I often pray for her that her soul be saved, but her refusal to face the hard questions of life has made her future and afterlife look pretty bleak. I guess it's what you do when you don't know the God of nature and live your life without eternal purpose. So you create idols where the physical immaterial fill that God-shaped hole in your heart, even though those idols can never fill it. And that's something I learned throughout my life ever since I was born in 1754. Only God can truly satisfy the internal spiritual desires of men, whom without we are nothing. And the greatest tragedy in life is the eternal suffering of rejecting God's love and choosing to live a life of sin, with the sin will never know what it's like to truly be alive. Say, you're a lot like my fiancée. She puts God first in her life, and I don't mind being second. I sure missed her even though I was away for work. And that really shows you love her. And I'm getting the feeling she has led you to becoming a better person because of the love and relationship you both hold. Anyway, I should return to the palace to get some sleep. It was good talking to you, and one last thing. Do this to your fiancé for me. The nymph then gently wrapped her arms around Jeremiah's waist and slowly kissed him on the cheek before letting him go and said, "Even though life may have its ups and downs, the love you hold will get you through anything. For a life without love is not a life worth living." Chapter 23. High Noon. Two enemies born by hate. Now they must draw closely nigh, for revenge came far too late. One shall live and one must die. Queen of a much stricken land, son of a man laid in strife, for daughter had left her hand, therefore he must lose his life. But she had not fully known, nor could her hardened heart see, he had changed and fully grown. By Jesus' grace he was free. In prison she will be smitten, and in Selene he be forgiven. As the day of May 11th had begun, Jeremiah knew what had to be done. To confront Paxura was nigh, and noon was going to be high. With the revolver on his hip, he had lost his height. For many years had gone past, revenge was far too late. But with Edenthia and his sister there, his heart was fully here. And with his sins the Lord did forbear, and in uncertain death there was no despair. But before Jeremiah could join the festival, his father Samuel had made his arrival. But before Samuel could see Ariana his daughter, Queen Paxura had created a matter. And when Samuel had entered the royal court with his daughter's invitation in the mail, Paxura's guard had thrown him in jail. And in jail, Paxura said to Samuel, "Because of your Joshua blood, you cannot be here. If you are seen, this queendom will bleed in on your hands. will the silver blood of this queendom be. For that you will rot in this cell until the festival is over and be quietly removed from the queendom to never return. Do you understand, Samuel? And to that Samuel answered, I came here to see our daughter and support her, yet you tore this family apart. She is my daughter and not yours. I am the vessel of the goddess Luna, not you men. You are below me, and always were nothing more than a means to create a future heir of this queendom. And now you have served Luna's purpose. Consider it an act of mercy that I let you rot in a cell, instead of executing you in the manner Luna has dictated we do to your kind since the dawn of time.
And with that, Poxera had ordered the prison guards to give Samuel 16 lashes with a bullwhip, one for each year he spent raising their daughter. But after 2 whips, the guards softened their blows, but reluctantly continued out of fear of Poxera. And after Poxera left to return to the royal court, one of the guards retrieved some of the delicious and wholesome food from the kitchen and brought it back to Samuel and said, I'm sorry I did what I had to. Normally we only give prisoners 2 or 3 lashes, but 16 was far too excessive. You have every right to beat the shit out of me once you get out of here, and I deserve it, for just following orders. But you must understand I was afraid for my life and I have a family at home, as well as being part of an underground Selenese church. If given the choice, I wouldn't have given you any lashes for trespassing. But what her maliciousness Queen Poxera says goes around these parts. The only advice I can give you is that you don't join any gangs while you're down here and lay low. You're probably going to be down here for a week before being deported, so don't die on me.
Meanwhile, in the outer courtyard, Titania had arrived at 9 a.m. with her friends as they were escorted by the royal guard to join the gala when they showed their invitations. And as the festival went on, the obnoxiously loud sound of fighter jets and attack planes could be overheard as 2 Andrew Jackson-class dreadnoughts could be seen in the sky. Then the president of Zalshura made an overly dramatic entrance into Lunsaro Palace, sharing his invitation as Poxera looked upon him and the entire Zalshuran army brigade outside her palace with disgust. Then Poxera sarcastically said to the president of Zalshura, rising from her silver throne, Let me guess. You came to create peace and prosperity in the Lunar Queendom with your army here? The president of Zalshura then answers, As a matter of fact, I have. You see, your daughter invited me to this festival, and I don't want to pass up a chance for meaningful diplomacy, especially when there's free booze involved. I also heard a little someone else is going to be here, and believe me, you wouldn't want the whole Zalshuran army here if you're getting nervous at this brigade that's not even doing anything. Poxera then huffs, Well, I guess there's nothing I can do to kick you out now, so you may as well stay in town for a week while the festival is ongoing. That's more like it. Now, where can I get the free food until Mr. Jackson arrives? And just as President George Solaris of Zalshura finished his sentence, Ronald Jackson makes his own dramatic entrance into the palace grounds and faces off with George Solaris, saying, So we meet again for the first time. Now it's time we discuss the terms of ending this pointless war. Poxera then tries to hide her indignation as she thinks to herself, And on the holiest day of the goddess Luna's rebirth in the coronation festival, all you Zalshurans can think about is booze and food? Oh, and then you disrespect me and my entire culture by not even practicing proper Lunar Queendom etiquette, and join that American custom of disrespecting every culture you come across. You're lucky you chose to come here on the Festival of Rebirth, or I would have had your head on a pike. Having my daughter's father here was already bad enough, and somehow you Zalshurans and Americans know how to set my expectations even lower. The only thing that could possibly make things worse is if Jeremiah shows up. But with my royal guard, hopefully I'll never have to run into him for the rest of my life. He'll be dead and mutilated 3 times over. and as Poxua stood up from her throne, Edenthiel asked her, "Is something wrong? My heart sense can tell there's something bothering you." Poxua then answered, "As a matter of fact, something is bothering me. I thought the leader of the Zolshuans was going to show up by himself, but then he decides to bring his army just like every other Zolshuan imperialist. Then that man and the American president decide to disrespect me and my entire culture by not kneeling before me, nor respecting the sacred nature of this day of Luna's rebirth. And there is to be no war on the day of rebirth, yet when we last had Zolshua present during the festival of rebirth, Zolshua annihilated the entire city of Lunsaro during a ceasefire agreement. And that's when Zolshua killed my mother and almost everyone in my family." Edenthiel then said softly, "I know it must be hard to have lost your family, but it's time we move on. Everyone who was responsible for that died more than 100 years ago. So even if you sought revenge against them, there's nothing you can really do to a dead man. Plus, a lot of things can happen with 100 years, so things could have completely changed since then. And that's why I'm sparing the president of Zolshura. And if this were not a religious festival, I would not hesitate to have him sent to an Amazonian gulag." "Doesn't that seem a bit harsh? I haven't seen him commit something I would consider worthy of prison yet." "Well, perhaps it is because we don't grow up in the same environment. After all, you share a lot more in common with the simple-minded nymphs of the South than those of us of higher standing and castes. So I would not expect much from your ability to understand my situation. Therefore, I cannot be too harsh on you. Plus, you're one of the only Christian infidels I would consider sparing. Because you're not Zolshuan, you are somewhat pleasant and have not tried to convert my daughter to your ridiculous belief system." "Of course not. I wouldn't force her to believe anything. After all, Jesus asked St. Peter, 'Who do you say that I am?' No, I am the Son of God, and therefore you must worship me or forever burn in hell, while making it rain hellfire and brimstone. And that's why Miss Ariana said she gave her life to Christ and abandoned the very talk. Only in Christ did she say she ever found any real freedom and wasn't forced to hate people she knew nothing about." And as Edenthiel said those words, Poxua felt a wooden stake drive through her immaterial heart as a hidden darkness squirmed inside her. And as she felt the darkness inside her, she saw a vision of an entire queendom turned against her with the faceless Selenese Crusader knight leading them. And before the knight lay the dead body of her mother, Speaker of Luna, Empress Diana of the Third Lunar Empire, with the beheaded silver statue of Luna melted into silver coins. Then the knight had spoken to her in her vision, and said with a voice as that of the voices of Amazonia, Miquon, Caroline, Aquarius, Euphrasia, Lunsaro, and Zolshua put into a single voice, and said, "Soon the day of your judgment is coming for every evil work you have done against your own people. Choose now which path you will follow, for one will lead to eternal life and the other to eternal suffering." And with the vision ended with the apocalyptic visions of a sky with darkness as lightning had torn the veils within the temple of Luna and burned it to the ground. And after the vision, she felt her heart pounding with anxiety as she excused herself from the main palace grounds and hid herself in her private chamber. And as she looked into the mirror, she saw the reflection of Jeremiah behind her pulling the hammer back of his father's revolver. Then she draws her crescent sword to slash the man behind her, which was only the regally dressed oil painting of her own daughter, now with the sword slashed through the middle. And as she tried to sleep, the visions in nightmares only haunted her further. And in the first nightmare she saw herself in late 18th century France, but instead of a French-speaking people, they spoke Selenese, with her in chains facing upwards towards the guillotine, in front of Notre Dame, and all around the guillotine was a cheering crowd of Selenese men and women dressed as French peasants. And as she lay there, looking upwards at the guillotine, the Catholic priest next to the executioner, dressed like Maximilian Robespierre, asked her, "Do you wish to confess your sins before being present with the Lord?" As she said nothing, paralyzed with fear, the priest anointed her head with oil before saying, "May God have rest and mercy on your soul," before the guillotine dropped and beheaded her, falling into it with her head falling into a basket. And after being beheaded, her nightmare found herself in the middle of Boston during the American Revolution, tied to a wooden post. And as she was tied up, the men in blue coats threw boiling tar on her burning skin and then covered her in feathers. And as she was there tied up in pain, the men in blue coats bore muskets and had the faces of Selenese men and said to her, loading their muskets, "For having served as a tyrant against the will of God and the will of the people, you shall pay the ultimate price. Because you have not given us liberty, we will give you death." The blue-coated men then opened fire, killing her in her nightmare. And the next nightmare she found herself in ancient Egypt in the seat of Pharaoh. And a man stood before her throne and said, "You will let my people go," before seeing her only daughter die in her hands as her body fades to a white dust to never be seen again. And when her nightmare in ancient Egypt ended, she found herself in ancient Israel on the hill of Calvary, as a criminal was being crucified next to Jesus, and the criminals had said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Then Jesus answered the dying man on the cross next to him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." And then around noon darkness came across the land where the sun did not shine. And as the darkness was across the sky, a bolt of lightning tore the temple veil in two as she saw Jesus die on the cross. And when she had hidden herself from the people in her dream for 3 days, she had seen the resurrection of Christ, and the body of Luna mutilated to never come back to life, and had thrown into a magma pit, spewing fire and smoke into the night sky. And in the next dream she saw herself on a floating island. Above her was a heavenly paradise with a straight and narrow pathway, and below the floating island was an ocean of fire, unlike the surface of the sun, where she could hear the screams of the souls of evil men in their eternal suffering with the most putrid of smells. And amongst the souls of the wicked was her own mother, Empress Diana of Lunsaro, of the Third Lunar Empire. Now she could see the body of her own mother being burned alive and rebuilt over and over again, and being tortured by demons for all eternity. And as Diana was being burned alive, she called out for the peasants she sent to their deaths during her earthly life to put but a drop of water on her tongue, but to no answer or forgiveness. And between the two paths stood an engraved stone image in all earthly languages. "Here lies the precipice of eternal life and eternal death. Choose wisely, for you cannot change the path you have embarked. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life." And after having read the stone, Poxer abruptly woke up with one of her nymph maids shaking her nearly in tears. And as the nymph said to her, "For a moment there, I thought you weren't going to wake up from those terrible nightmares." Poxer then asks the nymph, "What time is it?" To which the nymph responds, "It's 11:30, Your Majesty." Poxer then feels dread and anger as she mutters under her breath, "Soon he's going to be here if he hasn't been killed already. Only after high noon will I know for sure he's been killed. If not, I'd rather face him myself, the man who shot me in the side of my body." And as the nymph heard Poxer mutter to herself, she asked, "Who are you talking about?" Poxer then answered the cute nymph maid, "That's a matter between me and him, and if you're lucky enough to be on break at high noon, you will see him die in the castle courtyard." The nymph then looked at Poxer with terror as she tried to keep her distance as much as possible. Then Poxer was sent to the forge to sharpen her crescent sword and retrieve her silver crossbow and silver arrows. It was 11:45 as Jeremiah met up with his fiancée Denthio and her family at the palace. Nenthiel's father, Valentine, then said to Jeremiah, I don't know a better man my daughter should marry. You're a good man, Jeremiah, and have my blessing to be engaged to her. Too bad your father couldn't make it here to give his. Jeremiah then responds, Really is too bad, but Edenthiel's the best woman I could ask for. Ain't that right, Sugar Cube? Edenthiel then kisses Jeremiah on the cheek as Valentine says to them both, Well, I don't want to hold you two lovebirds up too much. I'm going to grab some more drinks and meet some other people. That centuries-old Dr. Kitsune is a pretty cool dude. It's also nice to meet my daughter Philomena here, too. Especially now that I get to meet her strange choice of friends. Although that Agron dude tries to act like a stove tough guy, I got him to laugh a little. Jeremiah then thinks to himself, I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear about Agron and Sylvia. I just want to spend some good time with my future wife and not have to deal with legalized bounty hunting. And hopefully, when Poxera gets out here, things go smoothly and we can just move on. I know I'm ready to forget the past and move on to the future. And when Jeremiah had finished that thought, he entered the courtyard and stood before the Queen's throne, looking her in the eye. Poxera. Queen Poxera then has everyone dispersed to the sides of the courtyard as Jeremiah and Poxera stood in a 20-foot unarmed standoff in the center as the clock struck 11:55. Poxera then said to Jeremiah, So you came back unscathed after all. I am not surprised a killer of your talents has failed to kill me, and came back knowing all the tricks of the royal guard and how to avoid them. But while my royal guard restrains from executing you, tell me why you really came here. Seeking revenge against me for making your sister a vessel of Luna? No. I'm here to tell you I've moved on, and it's not my place to seek revenge. Lord knows you'll be powerless when my sister takes your place, and then she can decide what to do with you. I've already made up my mind about moving on, and it's about time you do the same. Then there stood a moment of silence as the wind rustled through the leaves as the clock struck 11:58, and seeing Poxera had nothing to say. Jeremiah turned around and started walking away as a tumbleweed blew between them when Jeremiah straightened his vest and cowboy hat. And as Jeremiah was walking towards the gate, Poxera signaled for Vixentiel and 5 nobles of the house of Lunsaro to take aim at Jeremiah's back with their crossbows and silver arrows. As Poxera raised her crossbow behind Jeremiah's back, he heard the sound of a crossbow pulling back the strings, but before Poxera and the nobles and the high priestess could all execute Jeremiah, like the lightning of the west, suddenly turned on them and fanned the hammer of his father's revolver, killing all 5 nobles, incapacitating Vixentiel and shattering Queen Poxera's spine right as the clock tower had struck the bell of high noon. As Poxera lied there paralyzed from the waist down, Jeremiah said to her, for all of the Queendom and world watching the broadcast to hear, You should have thought twice before trying to kill your own son. Now you pay the price. Poxera stared at him, foaming from the mouth and unable to move. Come on, finish your revenge. Kill me, and I'll make 2 graves. A shallow unmarked grave for you and a hallowed tomb for me. Jeremiah then lights a cigar and blows the smoke in Poxera's face as he says, No, you don't deserve to be put out of your misery. You want me to take your life and make you die as a martyr, but I'm not gonna give it to you, especially not to someone who never gave a damn about her family in the first place. Poxera then struggles to reach for her crossbow as Jeremiah kicks it away. Poxera then ordered her royal guard to kill Jeremiah, but they no longer listened. Then Jeremiah said to Poxera, You're not the tyrant controlling my life anymore, and they don't fear you, and Umbria will see to it that you spend the rest of your days behind bars. Jeremiah then turns to return to the festival with peace, as Umbria commands the royal guard to put Poxera and Vixentiel on a stretcher and bring them to their holding cells. And while there, Umbral discovers Ariana's father Samuel and immediately pardons him of trespassing. Umbral then said to the gods to treat his wounds and treat him well before returning Samuel to the party. And when Samuel had returned to the party, his daughter Ariana ran up to him and loved on her beaten father with a love that had not been seen in 10 long years. Meanwhile, at the festival, Edenthiel was hanging out with Dr. Kitsune and the Princess Rhea of the Void Kingdom. And when Edenthiel saw Jeremiah return to her, she said, "I'm happy to let Paxer live. It would be a shame if she were to damn to hell and not get a chance at salvation. And even though I might not like how you shot Paxer and all those nobles, but after talking to Dr. Kitsune and hearing the full story, I at least know why you did it." And Jeremiah then answered her, "I didn't want to have to shoot Paxer, but she left me with no choice. Now I have a notch next to Paxer's name, and it feels like the burden I've been carrying for 10 years has been released. And I'm looking forward to our lives together. And tonight, I want you to hold me a little closer as we slowly dance the night away." And as Edenthiel tightly embraced Jeremiah while giving him a kiss, Umbriel hold up the death warrant for Jeremiah in front of them and says, "I'd hate to break it between you two lovers, but Jeremiah has a death warrant with his name on it." But before Jeremiah could reach for his revolver, Umbriel tore up the death warrant and said, "There's no reason to reach for a revolver, cowboy. I have already torn up your death and arrest warrant, and have written you an imperial pardon for having shot Poxura and having come here illegally. Now that your sister has told me the whole story of what Poxura have put your family through, I'm dropping all charges, and Poxura will be expressly sent to the far north Amazonian gulag in the Arctic Circle, without any possibility of parole." And knowing that the warrant for your death and arrest were legally written, the royal guard stood down when Poxura ordered them to execute you on sight, especially once the captain of the guard learned what Arion had told me was true. And although you may not have intended to kill Mafia members, the 5 nobles you killed during your shootout with Poxura were all key players in an underground crime cabal. So the Queendom thanks you for your service." Jeremiah then said to Umbriel flattered, "You don't have to thank me. I was just defending my own life from someone who was trying to kill me." "Then perhaps it was an act of divine providence that you didn't miss a single shot and spared the life of Vixentiel and Poxer while killing 5 high-level criminals without hurting anyone else. I've never seen even the best Selenese marksmen shoot that accurately and that fast with very accurate Armalite rifles. And yet you were able to land all your shots perfectly with an ancient and worn-out revolver. And just so you know, you are free to be within the Lunar Queendom whenever you like. Just remember to do it legally next time, or you might actually be arrested and deported. I have nothing more to say to you, so enjoy the festival. But one more thing. Congratulations on getting engaged." Umbriel then returned to his duties as Queen Pariana's Gore, with Edenthiel holding a silver box Umbriel had slipped into her dress pocket. And when she opened it up, she found a note inside that read, "To the future Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I am writing you a check for $50,000, hoping to pay a little bit for your wedding and some small debts you may have. Edenthiel has been nothing but a ray of sunlight in this dark castle, and the palace staff and the royal guard has much appreciated her presence. Too bad she can't stay here longer, but the effects of her being here will last for quite some time. In exchange, I wanted to give her future family a little gift to remember the staff by, and it was a good-natured nymph that suggested it. She is the royal jewelry maker, and she thought it would be nice to make you 2 silver bracelets with rubies, sapphires, and emeralds. With love and appreciation, Umbriel and the palace staff." And with that, both Edenthiel and Jeremiah put on the bracelets and returned to the festival while holding hands. Chapter 24. The Festival. As the festival continued, Umbriel stood outside Poxura's cell, accompanied by a team of bodyguards, and asked her, "Why did you try to kill someone in broad daylight for the entire world watching to see? You could have started another war to end all wars." Poxura then answered weakly, "I was angry because Jeremiah had converted my daughter to an infidel. Umbriel then answers, "Then I pity you. How far gone are you that you would kill your own stepson for something he didn't do? He has hardly seen your daughter for 10 years. Then who converted my daughter to Christianity and made her a friend of those Ashurans? She converted out of her own free will, because she didn't want to hate people she knew nothing about. All I ever did was answer any questions she had, because she has expressed to me that she could not trust you. In fact, the only people she said she could ever trust were Edenthiel and myself. You converted her, didn't you? I will have your head on a pike when I am out of this prison. I am afraid that isn't going to happen, Your Majesty. Now that Queen Ariana has taken your place, she asked me to throw you into prison instead of sending you to the gallows. And your daughter has asked me specifically to send you to the former communist gulag in North Amazonia for having separated her from her family for 10 years. That way you will know what it's like to be separated from your loved ones before you face trial for your other indictments. Be grateful that she hasn't sent you to Euphasia to face the guillotine after throwing her father into prison for no apparent crime, and then tried killing her brother who was simply there to tell you he was moved on. Perhaps a cold Arctic winter and hard physical labor in Amazonia would be a good teacher of what it's like to have your life and freedom taken away from you. Maybe then you will learn and understand what it was like for Queen Ariana to be under your thumb all these years while you were under the boot of your new Amazonian warden. But that's your choice whether or not to learn from your past, and maybe there's a slim chance you won't die in prison if after a few years you confess your wrongdoing and try to make amends with your daughter, who is now the queen." Paxova then tries to get up from her stone bench to fight Umbriel, but falls down because of her shattered spine. Umbriel then says to the prison guards, "Handcuff her and take her away. I want the prisoner out of my sight." The prison guards then forcefully throw Paxer on her stomach and handcuff her behind her back, as one of the guards says, "That was for Samuel, tyrant." And after cuffing Paxer, the guards stripped Paxer naked and rolled dice for her clothes in front of her before dressing her in a prison outfit. Then the guards took the secret exit and put her body on an unmarked train car and sent her northwest towards Amazonia. And as Paxer sat in that cattle car, she could feel the permanent cold Amazonian weather bite through her prison uniform like the teeth of a Doberman pinscher. And as the train stopped, she saw the red Amazonian flag bearing the golden sword and sickle, and heard the constant sound of prisoners breaking rocks. And because Zakshura couldn't walk, the prison guards carrying Kalashnikov rifles threw Paxo to the ground and forced her to crawl on her belly through the snow and mud through the prison's gate. And once inside, the warden greeted her, saying, "And out of all the degenerates and criminals I get in my prison, you are a crown jewel. I'm feeling generous enough to give a criminal of your standing a little extra comfort. You can have an extra frozen potato every night and a concrete bed added to your cell before you begin your hard manual labor in the coal mine tomorrow morning." And then the prison guards forced Paxo to crawl to her cell at gunpoint before locking her up, throwing some rotten cabbage, stale bread, and 2 frozen potatoes in her cell. And as she lied there in that cell was a window just small enough to hear the free children playing in a village not too far away, to be a constant reminder of the freedom she took from her own daughter. As Princess Titania was enjoying the festival, she noticed someone she had not seen for a long time. She ran over to see her elder sister Rhea and attempted to hug her, but Rhea pushed her away and said, "We don't know you anymore, Titania. You are exiled to never return to the kingdom." Titania then looked at her sister confused and asked, What are you talking about? I've learned from what I've done wrong, and I want to come back. Well, that just is too bad. Our father doesn't want you back, and unfortunately, I am only here as a placeholder, so our father would not have to deal with the Selenese, Zossuran, American, and other ethnic plebs, to put it lightly. However, I still missed having you around, and I am surprised by my sister found her way to this coronation festival out of all places. How did you ever get off Droxus, anyway? I had help. Without my friends Agrin, Sylvia, Philomena, Natalia, and Tatsu, I don't think I would even be here today. They really care about me, and I care about them also. Ria then scoffs. Don't be ridiculous, Titania. Their lives are not royal, and therefore disposable. Your life is so much more valuable than theirs, so why even care about them? Titania then takes a deep breath before answering. I care about them because they mattered to me. I hope you can understand that. Ria then dismissed Titania, saying, caring about those who are less valuable than you. Dost thou not remember thine royal upbringing? I think you have begun to allow your royal and pure blood to be tainted by these plebeians and commoners you call your friends. You must not allow them to take away your virtue. Titania then stamps her foot on the ground and replies, if by virtue you mean all the materialism I could ask for without any love or discovering who I'm supposed to be, I don't want it. Ria then inquires, what is this thing you call love? Aren't luxuries so much more satisfying than anything else? Why even be disciplined when everyone else is subject to us? It's something my sister understands. She still has a heart. I want to have freedom in my life and not be forced to marry a prince who doesn't love me and only wants me for my title. Titania, why are you upset? I'm upset because my sister is dead. She is not dead. She stands before thee. That's not what I meant. A small crowd of bystanders then watched them with Ronald Jackson and Natalia in the crowd as Ria answers. Calm thyself. Anger does not reflect the grace of a princess. Titania then snaps. She yells, then I don't want to be a princess anymore. I want to make my own destiny. I want to be more than Azel's virgin auctioned off to the highest bidding king. Titania then takes off her golden crowns and throws it so hard into the ground that the gemstones shatter like glass. Then she marches away from her sister and says to Natalia with tears of anger in her eyes, she says, I've done returned to my kingdom. First they exile me, and now my father doesn't even want me back. And if I do go back, I'd be nothing more than a bridal auction piece. There's no future for me back in my kingdom. Not a future I want. But I know there's freedom in your kingdom, and I want citizenship. That way I'll never have to return to my father's kingdom. Natalia then thought to herself, oh damn, Tanya is pissed. Before answering, hold up, Tanya. I know you're upset, but don't you think you're getting a little too emotional to make that kind of decision? No. For the first time in my life, I actually feel like I know what I want for myself. My own sister has changed, and my father has made me his enemy. Therefore, I'm going to come become an American citizen and join the army so I can invade my father's kingdom and destroy it. Okay, Tanya. Now you've gone a little unhinged. You're not even old enough to join the army, nor do you even look like you could pass a physical or mental test. I'm not letting you join the army. And why not? For one, fairy bones are hollow and easy to break. You're also very small and would easily get overpowered by someone much bigger than you. And you really don't seem like the type of person who would have the will to kill someone. Life in the military is not the fun of games you think it is, and we're golden throne while the rest of us don't get paid jack shit to go through hell. There's a reason I left the military after bad intelligence led my squadron to bomb an entire civilian settlement with 4 70,000-pound payloads before we even realized we had completely missed his all-serving target. I can only imagine the horror the regular army had to go through when they saw that, and that's something I don't want you to have to go through. And as Sylvia had overheard Natalia and Titania, she remembered the air raid that destroyed her village with no one to help her as she was trapped for hours under the rubble of a collapsed dragon den. And as she lied under that rubble of her dragon's den, She saw her dragon with shrapnel all in his body to protect her, as he bled until he breathed his last. And she remembered when Agron and Tatsu had rescued her, only minutes before seeing the American army overrun her village with the mangled bodies of everyone she knew. And after traveling for a few days, her heart only shattered as the report of her lover was killed in action, shot down by the same pilot that escorted those bombers that destroyed her village. Ever since that day, she vowed in her memory that if she would ever find the pilot who killed her lover, she would avenge him and her village. And since then, she has almost never taken her armor off, and without Natalia appearing, Sylvia said to herself, "Natalia, if you were ever the one that killed my future husband and led your squadron to kill my people, you don't have much longer to live. Your kindling ends where my blade begins. I should have listened to Philomena when she said she could not trust you. And from now on, watch your step, because my blade is sharpened and ready." An hour went by since Tanya saw Rhea and had calmed down as Natalia asked her, "Feeling any better, Tanya?" Tanya then answered with a solemn expression on her face, "I just can't take it anymore. My sister always looked out for me when I was younger, and now it's like I don't even know her. All I ever wanted was to be loved by my father and feel special. And now it feels like that will never happen. And ever since I've seen the world outside my father's kingdom, I feel like I've been lied to by everyone who was supposed to care about me except Edenthiel and Apollyon. Everyone in my family told me your kind were nothing more than depraved savages that only wanted to kill me. Yet you and Agron and the other Dragonborn were the only ones that actually showed me any love and affection. I'm sorry if I'm coming off as someone who hates my own kingdom, but going back now feels like I'm going back to hell for a sin that wasn't mine. Now I feel lost and no place to return to except where you and Agron came from." Natalia then thinks to herself, "Even though I'm here on the President's order to manipulate you for America's purposes, I can't take this anymore either. You've been through too much and you need some stability in your life. And if there's anything I can't stand, it's watching young girls like you being exploited by a king who only cares about his own power. If you ever so happen to change your mind about returning to your kingdom, I will personally accompany you on your journey and blow Azrael's brains out when I get the chance. Unlike you, Azrael, I actually care about Titania and will not lead her down a path of self-destruction." Natalia then said to Tanya, "I can understand what you're going through, Tanya. You can come to America if you'd like. You can start a whole new life there and leave your royal life behind." Tanya then answered sincerely, "Given the option, I want to live in your kingdom for a while now that I've given it some clear thought. I don't want to live in Zalshura, because Zalshura is my father's enemy and Zalshura might try to kill me because of my horrible father. I also need some time to think about my life in peace, and there doesn't seem to be a better place to do that than your kingdom. And if he's here, I'd like to meet your king." Natalia then gives Titania an awkward expression and asks, "By king, do you mean you want to meet Jesus? Or are you talking about someone else? America has no king but God alone." Titania then answers, "Maybe I should phrase it better. Can I meet the leader of your nation if he's here?" "I don't see why not. He's at the festival and seems to be done with the negotiations with President George Solaris of Zalshura." Titania then curtsies to President Ronald Jackson and says, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty." President Jackson then looks at Titania confused and asks, "Are you talking about me or someone else?" "I'm speaking with you, Your Highness." "Listen, it might be awkward seeing an outsider, but I'm not royalty. The people chose me to be the president and represent them before the world." "Then what should I call you, Your Majesty?" "Just call me Mr. President or Mr. Jackson." "And may I join your kingdom, Mr. Jackson?" "So long as you're not a terrorist, by all means you can apply for citizenship. And the war with the Zalshurans is no longer going nuclear, and has come to an end. So there's no need to worry about mutually assured destruction in your new home." "So how do I apply for citizenship?" "You can apply now and join me on Space Force 1 when I return. I'd love to have some company besides the Secret Service carrying the machine guns all the time, and it's important to get accustomed to your new way of life before making such a big decision. And besides, meeting King Azrael's daughter is an honor, because he refused to speak with my diplomats. But anyway, care to join me on Space Force 1 and spend some time at the White House?" "I'm not passing up an offer like that. After all, you seem much nicer than all the other world leaders I've met besides Queen Abigail. Maybe it's because I'm a man of the people, and I know everyone has a story to tell, even the most unknown people. And I know that look in your eye. I've seen that look in people seeking to manifest their own destiny, and I won't hold it back from you. As Titania joined President Jackson on Space Force One, her sister Rhea thought to herself, even though my father, the king, has said getting rid of you was good riddance, I genuinely fear for your safety. And though I am barred from going into that depraved kingdom of America, I will ask the gods to watch over you. But at times, because of my father's divine right, I'm afraid they may not.